Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Mubarak. I hope you're all doing well on this somewhat cloudy Friday afternoon. Today is September 11th. So today we are going to have our Khatera done by Brother Iftekhar. He's going to do the second part of a series that he's been working on living thoroughly through Islam. And following his Khatera, Sister Isra is going to be doing a discussion on the pleasures of life and Asma al-Husna. So inshallah, Iftekhar, I'm going to request for you to unmute yourself and turn it over to you, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Nicole, shall I begin?
Yes, please.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh. Wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره الكافرون الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Allah reminds us, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. You who believe, be mindful of Allah as is His due, and make sure you devote yourselves to Him to your dying moment. And He reminds us, يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. People, be mindful of your Lord who created you from a single soul, and from it created its mate. And from the pair of them spread countless men and women far and wide. Be mindful of Allah, in whose name you make requests of one another. Beware of severing the ties of kinship. Allah is always watching over you. And He finally reminds us, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَقُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا يُصْلِحْ لَكُمْ أَعْمَالَكُمْ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ فَازَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. Believers, be mindful of Allah. Speak in a direct fashion and to good purpose, and He will put your deeds right for you and forgive you your sins. Whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger will truly achieve a great triumph. So alhamdulillah, we began this series based on work performed by Dr. Umar Farooq Abdullah, whose work obviously is built upon the tradition of our scholars going all the way back, obviously, to the Prophet ﷺ and to his companions, who set the framework in which our scholars later developed and filled and created this beautiful intellectual edifice that we today enjoy, that we today use and utilize. So we talked about five key concepts, and Umar Farooq Abdullah calls them ilm al-amali, which translated would mean operational knowledge. It's knowledge that allows us to be functional in our given communities where we live. Functional in what way? We're all functional in the framework of Islam, using its core principles, not just in our ibadat, not just in our worship. We live in a modern world where we compartmentalize things. We have our religious life. Sometimes that's a more Western idea, a modern Western idea, that we have a religious life on Saturdays or Sundays, and then the other times we have other types of lives. Obviously, Muslims don't live like that. They're not supposed to live like that. But however, many Muslims do live like that, right? We are religious on Jummah, religious in Ramadan. We pray the 2 Eids, we pray Jummah, but we might skip the 5 daily prayers or some of them. It's because our frame of reference is not holistic, right? It's because we have in our frame of reference, multiple theoretical foundations that are impacting us. And the tragedy is that we don't recognize that, right? So that's part of our challenge. So these 5 things we mentioned: trusting reason, respecting dissent, prioritizing our societal obligations, making sure our priorities are correct, and then learning these maxims of principles that our scholars built. These are the 5 we'll be dealing with, and today we're dealing with trusting reason. And trusting reason is a heavy thing, so we're not going to finish today. We're going to go into next week or whenever the next opportunity is to really complete the ideas behind trusting reason. So why is reason emphasized in the Muslim tradition? Why not just believe? Why not just close your eyes, hold your breath, and believe? That's not how it works. Not in this religion. Not in any revealed religion does it work that way. And Allah has endowed, according to how he tells us in the Quran, he has endowed humans with the capacity to reason. And this is one of the principal reasons why we are unique, why human beings are unique in his creation. Not perfectly unique, but of the unique members of his creation. He has preferred us over some or much of his creation, depending on how you look at a verse. So the distinction that human beings enjoy is the capacity to reason, right? It's the capacity to take in what we observe around us, that is experiential knowledge, and put it in a framework that is what we call a rational framework. And this ability to rationally understand things, this is one of the gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should never reject it in favor of and there are people who will say, there's blind faith. There is no blind anything. Human beings are not capable of being blind. They are capable of narrowing themselves into certain frames of reference, and they're capable of rejecting certain things. But no matter who the human being is, they all have a frame of reference, right? Everybody does, and this is one of the key things to recognize about human beings, that even Allah has told us that He has gifted human beings with the capacity to reason, and we use it despite not wanting to use it, right? The real operative question is, are we using the right framework? Are we using a reasonable framework? So the scholars looked at this capacity to reason, and they looked at the rules and regulations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent with his prophets, from Adam to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they came up with the 3 P's, right? These are the 3 P's. The rules of Islam and of all revealed text is to preserve, to protect, and to promote the power to reason. Without the power to reason, the religion will not exist. And in our tradition, taklif, moral responsibility, cannot be imposed or is not imposed by Allah on a human being without the human being's capacity to be able to reason. So, children are exempt. Why are children exempt? Because they haven't developed the full breadth and depth of the capacity to reason, right? And different cultures and different texts and different contexts tell us when a human being reaches that capacity to reason. And it might be there's a level of age of discernment when the child knows truth from falsehood. Then there is an age of taklif or moral responsibility, and that age might be 14, 15, 16. In our society, in the American context, we think it's 18. It's an arbitrary number. But every culture has a certain age or a certain range of ages in which a human being becomes now morally responsible to himself or herself and to society at large. So the scholars always understood that we have to preserve and protect and promote the capacity to reason. So preserve, how do we preserve or protect, right? How do we preserve? By learning knowledge, by learning the frames of rational inquiry and so on. How do we protect? By not drinking, because when you drink, you lose the capacity to reason, and so on, right? So you can see the Shari'i constraints are designed in this argument are designed to protect our capacity to reason, and it's to preserve our capacity to reason, and it's also designed to promote our capacity to reason, and hence we have schools, and we have schools of jurisprudence and schools of theology and creed. All of these were designed to protect and promote and preserve the capacity to reason. So hopefully that is very clear to us. I can only see one face right now, and that is Nicole's face. She's smiling. She's giving me a big smile, mashallah. So that is very encouraging. Thank you, Nicole. So this taklif is very critical, right? And what does Allah say about taklif? What does Allah say about this capacity to reason? So Allah says, Surah Al-Baqarah, كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. In this manner, Allah makes the signs clear for you that perhaps, لَعَلَّكُمْ, perhaps you may reason, right? So this ta'qilun, right? The verse the verse the verb that is here is ta'qilun, using your aql, your rational faculty. So Allah makes all of these things, presents all of these things. What are these things? The previous verse talks about the signs of Allah. And He makes them clear so that you may continue to reason. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. So built into this ayah is the notion that we may choose to be stubborn and refuse to use our capacity to reason. And this is critical, right? This is so critical to understand that we have the ability to reason, and we can suspend our ability to reason. We can refuse to use it, right? We can refuse to use it. And this is one of the things that becomes apparent as you think about this verse. Allah also says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي يُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ وَلَهُ اخْتِلَافُ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Allah is the one who gives life and and death, and to Him belongs the alteration of the night and the earth and the day. Do human beings then not reason? أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Do they not understand? Do they not reflect? Do they not think about the alteration of the night and day, and of the emergence of life and death, and the re-emergence of life that we see constantly around us? Every year we see this, right? Spring, life comes; fall, life dies; winter, everything is dead, and then we have the cycle repeat again, all on its own by the power and majesty of Allah's will, Allah's knowledge, and Allah's qudra, Allah's power. And there's this final ayah that is important because it's a threat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to those who do not use their reasoning capacity. And He says, وَيَجْعَلُ الرِّجْسَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. وَيَجْعَلُ الرِّجْسَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Allah will put a loathsome chastisement upon those who do not use their reason. Who do not use their reason. And this happens as a byproduct of Allah's sunnah, right? I'll give you a very simple example that would be very, very hopefully compelling in the age of COVID. Our institutions, our political institutions, and our political leaders, a set of them, chose to simply ignore the information that was readily available from the very beginning of this crisis, chose to mismanage, chose to publicly confuse and deflect. And so we have the highest death toll in the whole world, and we are one of the leading first world countries, right? Which itself is a prejudicial statement. Nevertheless, we're supposed to have our act together, and we don't have our act together, right? Because in this frame, we refused, or a group of political decision makers refused to use the knowledge that they had to act upon that knowledge, right? So, وَيَجْعَلُ الرِّجْسَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ, Allah will put a loathsome chastisement upon those who do not use their reason. And part of the chastisement of Allah, potentially, right? This is how we think about it. Potentially is the disaster that we are experiencing. So it's important to recognize how important it is to ensure that we as a community, and now I'm talking about the American Muslim community and the Muslim community at large, that we pay heed to sound knowledge, and we pay heed to sound processes of knowledge, and that we act upon sound knowledge, and that we act rationally with knowledge, right? So this is part of this idea of knowledge and of rational inquiry. Imam Ghazali, everybody knows Imam Ghazali, right? And there are two Imam Ghazalis. There's the Imam Ghazali of the past, and then there's the modern Imam Ghazali. And obviously the Abu Hamid Ghazali, the classical scholar, is a brilliant, one of the stars, luminaries of the Muslim tradition. But Imam Muhammad Ghazali, the one who passed away in the early 90s, who lived in the 20th century, is also a 20th century brilliant scholar by the name of Ghazali as well. The older Ghazali said, know that the question of reason's preeminence is something that does not require much trouble to clarify, especially since the eminence of knowledge itself only becomes clear by virtue of reason, right? So the point he's making is, it is obvious when you just reflect a bit about it, that one values the right information in doing things, and the ability to value the right information that everybody values is because we can actually rationally think, right? So what he's saying is the fact that every human being values information, understanding, proper understanding of things, is a reflection of their innate capacity and desire and need to reason, and to reason properly. So this is a very interesting way of thinking about knowledge and reasoning. A famous Persian scholar from Persia, his name was Raghib al-Isfahani, Isfahan, from one of the famous cities of Persia. He says what I find so fascinating. I often share this. He says, never be satisfied with a person's Islam. Never be satisfied with a person's Islam until you have tested his reason, or his capacity to reason. This is a very profound statement. It's not a prophetic statement, but it's a scholarly statement. It's a very profound one, because he's giving us a sort of a rule of thumb that if you have acquired the sound understanding of how reason and reasoning works in the Muslim tradition, then you have at your disposal a tool to assess how well someone else understands Islam, right? So he says, never be satisfied with the person's Islam until you have tested his reason or his capacity to reason, right? So it's a criteria he puts forth for us that we can use. But a caution here is that if you're going to use it, you better know how to use it. You better know what is the Islamic framework of reasoning, and that's important, right? And then, of course, there is nothing in Islamic ethics that is not based on reason, right? We look at Allah's commands because Allah Himself tells us there's nothing He has created without a purpose, a maqsad, okay, or a rationale. Sometimes the rationales are hidden from us, but those are opportunities to explore and understand what those rationales might be. And at other times, Allah states them, right? And this type of dialogue Allah has with us from the Quran is what helped our scholars to develop the frame of religious rational framework that Muslim society, that Muslim scholars developed for us. Okay, a couple of other things. Western interactions with Muslim societies, both medieval as well as modern, tend to think about Muslim scholars and see the emergence of the Mu'tazila, which was a group a group that posited a certain set of creedal positions as the only true group that used rational inquiry and rational thought. That is far from the truth. It is a very biased view because in the Sunni world, as well as in the Shia world, in the Sunni world, the Ash'ari and the Maturidi, and even the Athari creedal traditions are on the foundation of rational understanding and rational argumentation, right? So that it's not just the Mu'tazila that we're rational and everybody else is non-rational or maybe even irrational or irrational. No, the foundations of Sunni creed and Sunni thought is based on a rational approach. In fact, every one of the sciences, okay, is based on a rational approach, because as Imam Ghazali said, you don't have to think too hard to recognize that if you're going to deal with words, and the Quran are words, right, that you must then think, and you must have a proper and a balanced approach to think, that you can't quote one verse out of context, you can't quote one verse when there are 10 other verses talking about the same subject. So these are things that become apparent as you study. And even as we consider this idea, even the Athari, the third frame of creedal thought within the Sunni tradition that is associated with the Hanbali school of jurisprudence, even that and its greatest proponents, Ibn Taymiyyah and his student Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, even they, who are considered the star proponents of the Athari creed, are actually from the rational wing of the Hanbali school. That is, they themselves are not the ones who reject rational frames and rational thoughts, but they are the proponents of rational frames and rational thoughts, and they have certain different conclusions, which is reasonable. The Ash'aris and the Maturidis and the Atharis agree on many things and disagree on some things, but that is part of rational inquiry, that you will arise with differences, and this is the subject of the second idea that inshallah we'll deal with, the idea of respecting dissent. One of the schools in our tradition, called the Zahiri school, the Zahiris rejected the use of reason in theology and law, in creed and in law, in aqidah and in fiqh, right? They rejected the use. They had a different methodology, and they didn't survive. That school didn't survive, right? It didn't survive, and there are remnants on and methodologies of even that. Even that school had a methodology, but they were anti use of rational frameworks within theology and law, and the school didn't survive. It is a testament to the preponderance of the rational method and approach that the vast majority of our scholars in the Sunni tradition, in the Shia tradition, used to establish the edifice of knowledge in Islam. Another point that will be very interesting to reflect on is the fact that in Muslim societies, there was never a conflict between religion and science, right? This is unknown in Muslim intellectual history, right? It's just not known. In fact, what you have, you had polymaths, you had scholars who were disciplined in multiple areas that were, very far apart. There are physicians who were experts in Islamic law and creed. There were astronomers who were experts in tafsir and hadith, and so on and so forth, right? So empirical science, which is what these natural sciences are based on, and the rational sciences, which is what creed and other sacred sciences divisions are based on, there was never a conflict. They were all aligned, and they all helped and promoted and supported each other. So this is very, very important. And many of the, in fact, all of the medieval scholars who were scientists par excellence never began any scientific texts without lengthy reminders to the readers of their books that all of this that follows is merely a drop in the ocean of knowledge that Allah has given us, right? So they would always bring back their research and their discoveries into the proper frame, and that is the frame of humility. We have knowledge that which Allah has revealed, and our knowledge compared to obviously the knowledge of the universe, and then beyond that, the knowledge that Allah has, cannot be compared, right? So we have knowledge, and we are grateful to Allah to have made us privileged to have received this ability to reason. But we submit our knowledge and our reason and our understanding of this universe through discovery. We submit it in a frame of humility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we forever are grateful for this capacity that Allah has given us. So these are very important framework of understanding how reasoning works in the Muslim tradition. And the next part of exploring the framework of rational inquiry is to really understand how Muslim scholars used what were frames of reference from the past, whether it was Greek logic, whether it was the logic of other societies. The Persians, the Sasanians had their own frames of inquiry. The Arabs had less of that. The Arabs of the peninsula at the time of the Prophet, but the two major empires, the Roman Empire, which is inherited the Greek tradition, and the Sasanian Empire, which inherited the Persian tradition. These were also had their own frames of rational inquiry, and the Arabs, the Muslims that emerged out of the peninsula, and as people converted both in the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire, they brought their frameworks. They understood the Quran, and this was the milieu in which a framework emerged that we now define as the Muslim rational framework, or the Islamic rational framework. So our scholars understood Allah's revelation. They understood previous frames of reference, and they created a new framework of reference. It's very important to understand that framework of reference, right? This is very important. So inshallah, given the paucity of time, I will develop the framework more deeply, inshallah, next time. But I will begin the concept with a very brief statement that you can reflect upon. And this first emerged, this categorization that I'm about to present to you, which we will develop further next time, first emerged in the discussions around the haram and the halal, right? Because that is part of how we obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We eschew what is haram, and we and what is fard, what is obligatory, we have to do as much as possible. So how do you come to understand law that is an order from Allah that is forever, And how do you come to understand an order from Allah that's contextual, right? Is prayer a law from Allah that is forever, or are there times when we can suspend it? That's a question that we can answer. Are there other commands of Allah? Are they immutable commands, or are they commands that can change? Right. This is an important question to answer, and this is a question that our scholars asked, and then they formulated an answer, and those answers and that whole framework that came out of answering this type of question is what has actually preserved the Muslim tradition. Jews have to pray 3 times a day. Christians should be praying a certain number of times a day, ostensibly 3 times a day. But if you ask a Christian today in the United States, how did Jesus pray? They won't be able to tell you. They won't be able to tell you. But if you ask a Muslim, how did Muhammad pray? They'll be able to tell you in great detail. Part of the reason why this exists in Islam and has disappeared in Christianity is because of the answers to the questions that I posed earlier. How do we know what of Allah's commands is forever and unchangeable, and how we know which commands of Allah may change given the change of space and time? So inshallah, we'll cover that next time. And I would like you to think about this question. If you read things that answer this question, wonderful. We will delve deeper into this framework that builds the framework of the rational inquiry, and therefore our ability to trust in our reasoning capacity, inshallah, next time. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Ameen. Wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah khair, Iftekhar. I really appreciate it. We have one comment from Sister Hiba to your question of how to interpret the particular versus the universals. This reminds me of a particular thinking by Mahmoud Taha, who was executed for his heretical thinking about the distinction between the Meccan versus the Medina surahs. So not as much a question as a comment.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that question. If this is the time, I can answer it. If it's later, if it's better later, then I can do that as well.
So Sister Isra, let's see. I think you can. Let me just double check. So Sister Isra, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, do you mind if Brother Iftekhar answers that question quickly?
I actually am a bit short of time. I had to interrupt another meeting to come. So
no problem.
Go back to my other meeting.
No problem, inshallah. So we'll Iftekhar, if you could hold to the end, then we'll respond to that. So Sister, I know you wanted to share your screen. You should be able to now.
Okay.
And will you be turning your camera on?
No, I'm not camera ready today, so I'm just going to be speaking.
Okay.
Okay, Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum salam.
As some of you might recall, we have spoken a bit about how to approach the Quran in the previous 2 sessions that I got a chance to speak here. And the main focus that we were going to look into was the story of Adam. And so I wanted to highlight a couple of things from there, and then talk about something that concerns all the Adams, meaning all of us, all human beings, on earth, the particular situation of our lives and pleasure and transience. So one of the things we said earlier is that the Quran wants us to go beyond the surface. When we live without the Quran or an authentic revelation from our Creator, we live on the surface, which means we have senses that God gave us, perception and capacity to think, interact with the world. And so we use those tools, and with those tools, without revelation, without enlightening tips from revelation, we get stuck on the surface of things. We live in a world, where one thing makes the other. This guy, ruins my life. This other person gives me my paycheck and sustains me. Natural forces run the world. Laws of nature govern the universe, and so on. So we have all these superficial observations, and it's really through the Quran coming in and giving us cues to rethink our assumptions and our perceptions that we get enlightened. And so it's extremely important then to read the Quran for special mission that it is for. We need to look at the Quran to see clues for life that we wouldn't otherwise be able to find, right? I don't need the Quran to tell me that sun revolves around the earth. I don't need the Quran to tell me to be nice to other people, even though the Quran talks about these. We need to pay attention to the special perspective it brings into the relationships and the way we see nature. These two terms, I know they may be mystifying terms, but shifting from horizontal way of thinking to vertical way of thinking is essential, which means, of course, we need a lot of time to unpack this. But when we mean by horizontal is we live in a world as if limited things are able to make these changes and create things and cause destinies, open destinies and close our destinies and so on. Kind of this horizontal way of thinking to start seeing the world's actually in a state of becoming from beyond, that is pointing to this transcendence. And then we in the Quran is always constantly talking about signs, ayat, and it's another mystery that we need to, inshallah, pay attention to. The signs are not just for people who weren't born in a Muslim society or Muslim families. Signs are the perspective changer in the Quran, to see the world not as just happening haphazardly or as if by itself, but revealing beautiful names of God. I know these are kind of very, very large points, broad claims, and very important points, but they need to be unpacked. And as I mentioned before, I'm really grateful to Risale Noor as a resource. Zaman Saeed Nursi's Epistles of Light, and also studying with Dr. Yamina and Dr. Ali, founders of Dr. Yamina is founder of Receiving Noor. That has been very helpful as well. So what I'm going to do in the next 10 minutes or so is to try to have this at the back of our minds without any in pretension to explain and unpack them, these key things, but have them in our back of our minds to come back to Adam. And Adam is, as we said earlier, like any other figure in the Quran, Adam is not about just primordial history, what happened to the first human or before the world was created. It's not about telling us primordial history. It's about talking about what it means to be human. Adam represents all of us, male and female, all of us. Same Eve, same with all other male and female characters in the Quran, they represent us. So in this Quranic passage, it says, when I have formed him, the human being, fully and breathed into him of my spirit, fall down before him in prostration. The Creator is speaking to the angels and saying, I'm breathing onto him from my spirit, and fall down before him in prostration. And what does it mean to be a human being, to be formed fully, perfectly, and be having breathed upon from God, from God's Spirit? And that's a potential, a being that angels are called to bow down before, not as a way of worshiping, but as a way of recognizing the significance of it. So then, this human being, as we went through this in the earlier session.
Sister Isra, some of the participants are having a difficult time hearing. If you could just speak up just a bit.
Yes, I can. Yes.
Thank you.
So we talked about how human being is in the Quran talked about as being a representative Khalifa on earth. And then the angels asked the question, how come a Khalifa, this human being who is going to shed blood and spread corruption? And then the Quran implied that this human being who will indeed going to do all these things, at least some of them, is still worth creating. So there's something in human potential that is still makes human being worth creating, even though they will have this abuse of the potential that's given to them. And then one of the key, I guess all the verses are key, but one of the key verses for us today here is that God teaches Adam all the names. And as you might recall, angels don't know all the names, but Adam does. And that is a way of showing that it was worth creating human being. A human being has a potential, a mission that even angels are not able to manifest. So what names? There are lots of speculations and discussions in, if you look at tafsir literature, and any of you who have studied different tafsirs a little bit gets a sense that some tafsirs are more insightful than others. And one very insightful, I think the most insightful way of talking about the names that Adam was taught is that names, asma, are the beautiful names of God. Adam has been given access to knowing God with all his beautiful names. And to God alone belong all the names, all the Asma al-Husna, the Quran says, and invoke him with these and stay away from distorting these names, as you see in the verse translation here. So knowing the names, as one of the previous presenters, I think Zahra Chima, presented earlier, it isn't about memorizing a list of names of God, rather recognizing that to God alone belongs all beauty and perfection. What is compassion, what is knowledge, it's wisdom, it's justice, all of these names belong to God, means the sources of all these qualities, these beautiful qualities, lie in one eternal absolute source, God. And if anything, anyone is displaying any of these, any glimpses of these names, I'm getting the source from God, right? So if you see someone expressing some wisdom and the same person acts foolishly another time, you see that, well, he wasn't the source of wisdom, right? Wisdom, the source of wisdom is coming from somewhere else. And the journey of Adam, meaning journey of human being, the journey of our lives, is to witness these beautiful names and manifesting in the world around us and within us. And to be a Khalifa means is to manifest these names, these beautiful names, consciously. Because I can unconsciously manifest, I mean, we all manifest beautiful names of God, right? I can even deny God and be in God's beautiful names. The way I am made in such detail, from my heart to my intestines, to my nails, to my eyes and eyebrows, and I am manifesting God's names of Al-Musawwir, Al-Qadir, Al-Hakim, Al-Kareem, the generous, the one who gives shapes, the one who arranges wisely, the one who arranges beautifully. I am manifesting these names, but the call of human being is to do so consciously. And that is what separates me as a human being from a cat or from a monkey or from another creature on earth, that everything is manifesting beautiful names or pointing towards the beautiful names. A human being has the potential to do so consciously. Now, as you know, things happen. Adam and Eve, they go to some ventures on the garden, on paradise, before they get sent down, right? They eat from the forbidden fruit. And what is interesting is that they are lured to eating from this fruit with the promise of eternity. Satan in the Quran very interestingly says to Adam and Eve that if you eat, you'll be eternal. Why is this important for us? The story is for us, and it's pointing to an intense yearning that all of us have. We want eternal happiness. Whether somebody believes in life after death or not, we are all craving beauty, goodness, life forever. That's why we hate, or people hate, not necessarily me, but people, well, hopefully not me, but people hate getting old. We tend to dislike getting old. We tend to dislike death, losing our youth, because we have a deep longing for eternity. And just to come to this one point, God says to Adam, go down. Some of you being the enemies of others. So it's plural, go down, all of you, human beings and Satan. You will have dwelling on the earth and provision for a time. What is interesting here is that, it is very clear that the duration is limited. You are going to go on earth and have dwelling there. You will dwell on earth for a time, right? For a limited amount of time. Now, creatures who are longing for eternity and trying to find eternity on earth, this is something to ponder upon. It's a Friday, so the tradition is to say a few things to kind of encourage us to reflect. So may this be our reflection, perhaps today, perhaps this week. I am on earth for a brief time, and why? As a creature who craves for longs for eternity. And then another passage of the Quran says that whoever follows the guidance will be fine, and whoever turns away from remembering God, his shall be a life of narrow scope, and he will be resurrected blind. So there's something to do with our mission on earth that connects with beautiful names of God. And within that, this is a temporary time period. And if I don't remember God, and what does it mean to remember God? That's a big question to be unpacked. But whatever that zikr is, if I am not able to do that, it's going to be a difficult life. And it also has a sense of blindness. I'm being superficial, not seeing reality as it should be. Now, I wanted to share with you another passage from the Quran. Yeah, can you see this new screen? No, I think I need to share again. So these couple passages, verses from the Quran, talk about the earth. Okay, I'm going to read in original first and then the English. والأرض مددناها وألقينا فيها رواسي وأنبتنا فيها من كل زوج بهيج تبصرة وذكرى لكل عبد منيب ونزلنا من السماء ماء مباركا فأنبتنا به جنات وحب الحصيد والنخل باسقات لها طلع نضيد رزقا للعباد وأحيينا به بلدة ميتا كذلك الخروج. So this is going to be my last 5 minutes. So the verse says, do they not look at the sky above them, how we have built it and made it beautiful and free of all faults? So the verse is calling us to look around us, to look, to observe, and to pay attention how things are built and made beautiful, زيناها, and free from fault. So we tend to focus on passages in the Quran that says, pray. As all, if you go to fiqh, well, you have to pray this many times. The verses that say, do they not look at, let them look at, we don't tend to think it is an obligation, it's a genuine invitation, but it is. And it goes on to continue to talk about how the earth is spread wide, with mountains firm, and all kinds of beautiful plants of all kinds are brought forth. And this is very interesting. Why is this all for? Offering an insight and reminder onto every human being who willingly turns to God. تَبْصِرَةً وَذِكْرَى لِكُلِّ عَبْدٍ مُنِيبٍ. In other verses, as you may be familiar, it talks about how the earth is made beautiful and it's turned into just dust and everything withers away. So, So this is a moment for reflection, because how come that the world is so well detailed and, think about a plant or a living being, how well decorated and decked with senses, and you see as the seasons change, so many creatures are coming into life, and then they're going to be gone in a week or two, or at the end of the summer. Why is this all of this, right? This is a human question. This is not simply a Muslim question. This is a human question. Why is this? And then we enjoy things, and quite a bit of our lives, as the Quran has been dwelling on earth, is spent on providing for ourselves, for our families, enjoying things, but then they don't seem to last. So I want to offer this paragraph from Sayyid Nursi as a reflection and as an ending. It says, the adornments of this world are not simply for the sake of enjoyment or admiration. For if they yield pleasure for a time, they cause pain for a longer time with their cessation. They give you a taste and whet your appetite, but never satiate you. For either the life of the pleasure is short, or your life is short and too brief for you to become satiated. So this is a fact, these are facts, and really the Quran always invites us to look around us and look at the facts. We tend to think facts in a very kind of technical sense, science and facts, but actually science ignores a lot of facts. And one of the major facts in our lives is that we want to enjoy life, whether through what we eat and drink, or with our friendships, or with going around, and yet the pleasure is very transient, right? This isn't about disliking the world. The Quran doesn't say hate the world, but it is wants us to pay attention, as I showed just in the verse, tabsira, dhikra, right? What am I going to take from this? And as a reflection, I want to leave you with this. These adornments of high value and brief duration, that flower is so detailed, that fly is so detailed, and yet it passes when the season finishes, must then be for the sake of instruction in wisdom. And that's where we see beautiful names. The flower withers away, but we through the flower we get to see the source of beauty, a glimpse of it. For stirring gratitude, right? You enjoy that orange and it finishes. But the gratitude becomes a connection to something larger, something enduring. And for encouraging human beings to seek out their perpetual originals in paradise, so that I am in a journey beyond this finite life, I am to return. So these pleasures then, therefore, for other goals, exalted goals beyond themselves. I want to leave you with this. A lot can be unpacked, but inshallah we can keep these Quranic passages and these Quranic wisdom in our hearts and have more opportunity, inshallah, in the future to remember, to make dhikr. Thank you. Jazakumullah khair.
Ayakum. Thank you so much, Sister Isra, mashallah. Always so glad to have you share with us these beautiful thoughts. Sister Gail, would you like to do the announcements, and then we'll go back to Iftekhar with the remainder and the questions.
Okay, that sounds good. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Please visit our new website at mainlinemuslimsociety.org, where you can contribute to our ongoing projects through the Amana Foundation. Thank you in advance for your contributions. There's a link on our webpage where you can find recordings of our Friday programs. We're also live on Facebook. Please share this information with other members of our community. Your board of directors are here to serve the community. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you or someone you know is sick, please let us know through our Zoom chat so we can say dua for them. If you have any announcements to add to today, please feel free to add them. Your attention's been appreciated. Thank you. Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you, Gail. Jazakallah khair. Appreciate that. Iftekhar, you wanted to respond to Sister Hiba's question?
So I see that it's not a question, it's a comment.
A comment.
Yeah. Mahmoud Taha was a Sudanese scholar who was executed for holding a certain set of views, and in 1985, I believe. There's a Brill publication that has a chapter in it analyzing why he was executed by the Jafar Nimeri regime. He was a scholar, he was a trained scholar, and he had a certain view about how he distinguished Meccan verses from Medinan verses. I'm not very familiar with his arguments, never having studied his works or the gist of the position he had taken. But it looks like, from memory, it looks like the political regime of Jafar Nimeri apparently, and this is an accusation, cooperated with Hassan Turabi, who was the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood in Sudan at the time, cooperated in the persecution and execution of Muhammad Taha, the scholar. Again, I can't comment beyond the facts of his execution. The motivation of his execution, I think, is dealt with in this particular chapter of this publication. But I think Sister Hiba Dr. Hiba is mentioning that because the controversy around it is an alternative way that Mahmoud Taha developed of looking at Meccan versus Medinan verses. And my initial inclination is to suggest that being executed for something like that sounds very very extreme, right? Intellectual contributions. There are many intellectual contributions in the Muslim tradition that are not mainstream, that are marginal. But the framework of dissent always managed to tolerate it. Only when political agendas became involved is where things like this potentially arose in Muslim history. So if a scholar within a school of tradition objected to an idea, at best he could be he could be rejected from the particular school, but only when that school or certain scholars with an agenda would seek the backing of the political leadership in either supporting or persecuting, do these things become out of control and out of hand. And that is why many scholars historically stayed away from allying themselves or being in the company of political leadership, especially if political leadership was very aggressive or violent. So that's the only sort of reflection I can offer, because again, I don't know the gist of his arguments. It seems Sister Hiba probably knows exactly what was his position.
Okay, thank you so much. Sister Hiba, I've asked you to unmute if you wanted to add anything to that. Seems she's saying Jazakallah khair. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I wanted to say again, Juma Mubarak. I wanted to recognize that, 19 years ago today, this country saw a great tragedy, as many other countries do. And I'd like to make all of us to make dua for those that lost their lives and had their lives inexplicably changed by that day. And for all of us as Muslims here in the US, that day, people hijacked our religion and changed the way we move throughout this country forever, probably. So again, I'd like to make dua for all of us and for all of those that lost their lives and families that suffered, and for all the Muslims suffering around the world today. So if we could read Surah Al-Fatiha together, inshallah, that would be great. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Inshallah, go out, enjoy this weekend. Fall is coming. I'm so excited. We are going to have cooler weathers, nicer, clean smells. Pumpkins are coming and pumpkin spice lattes are back. So enjoy the weekend, inshallah. Everyone have a beautiful Friday. Thank you for joining me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you all safe and healthy until the next Jummah, inshallah. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I will, everyone, unmute if you'd like to, inshallah, if anyone wanted to say anything.